Hey everyone, Angelo here, Hollywood filmmaker, greatest screenwriter in the history of the world, recovering hobo, and a car-free individual in Los Angeles. I've been thinking about a video like this for a while now. I've made them before, but I want to go into greater detail about how I went car-free, why I did, and why I believe it's a great decision. It can benefit your life, it can make the lives better people around you, and it's actually an important decision to make, not just for you, but for the greater region and the people around you. So I've lived in LA for 4 years now. I had a car for the first 2.5 years. Almost said three, but no, like 2.5 years. Two of the cars were destroyed in overnight hit and runs. So they were parked on the street, both destroyed overnight. The first of them while I was sleeping in it, because that's where I slept for the first 2 years in LA. I was homeless. I was living in my car. And after the second car was destroyed, that was in October 2021. It was hard to find a quality used car that was affordable. My goal was to get something that was privately owned, so it wasn't from a dealer, that I could test drive and have a mechanic look at. I was looking on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist and probably some other sites too, and I couldn't find anything that looked quality, anything from an actual private seller in my price range. I wanted to spend no more than like $2,000 or $3,000, and I certainly couldn't find anyone who was willing to let me test drive the car or take it to a mechanic first. So a lot of the listings I was seeing were from dealers posting as if they were private sellers on Craigslist. Either they were like individual dealers, or like they were working for dealers, but would kind of like outsource the dealer sales and go on Craigslist. And the problem with cars like that is I don't know what condition they've been maintained in. I would ask them, could I test drive it? Most people didn't respond to that, or bring it to a mechanic. One person said, yeah, after you pay for it. So that's a bad sign. That means do not take the car, because if you're confident the car is a good car, you're not going to say that to someone. You're going to say, sure. And sure enough, that's the last car. That's what the owner said. And he let me test drive it. I brought it to two mechanics, and the guy who owned it was a mechanic. Sure enough, the mechanic I brought it to, the first one, they found some oil leak and they said it was going to cost a lot. And the guy was like, nah, let me fix it. He fixed it, brought it to another mechanic like a day later. And the guy's like, yeah, this guy's kept it in perfect condition. There's no cleared error codes or anything. So I got it. It was a good deal. But that was a 2000 Toyota Camry. Slept in that for however long, another year or so. And when that was destroyed, again, it's like, couldn't find something affordable. And there was a part of me that was like giving me a little bit of a twinge of, do I really need a car? Can I get rid of this? Because I'm only driving like 3 miles to work. I don't really need it to go a lot of places. Yeah, I would drive it to downtown or to the secret movie club or the food bank. But I was like, that's a lot. And parking it is a huge pain in Koreatown where I live. I'd have to park it like 4 or 5 blocks away a lot of times. And you can't leave it more than 3 days. And it was getting dirty every week. It's a constant hassle and expense to clean. So I'm like, do I really need this? But I didn't do the smart thing and say, okay, well, what can I do to change that? Like, what are the options? Because I would see people riding around on scooters on the street, on the buses, on bikes, and I'd think like, oh, those poor people, too bad, like they have to do that, you know? Like they probably want cars, right? They just can't afford them. And there's an aspect of that that's certainly true. Cars are very expensive, and living in anywhere, North America basically, is very expensive, let alone Los Angeles. But I realized after I lost the car, it's not really worth it right now. So the bus was free. I was taking the bus for a few months. It was free because when the pandemic hit, LA had made the buses free, no fares, for like 22 months. But eventually the bus fares did kick in after like 3 months. I was taking the bus to work, walking around my neighborhood, figuring out places to go. And I realized if I'm going to pay for the bus, The problem was in the afternoons, the bus rarely arrived. It would be like 45 minutes late. I almost never waited for it. I'm like, screw it, I'd rather just walk home. And I would just walk 3 miles home. So eventually I got a bike, and it was the best thing I could have done. And since then, I've only become more resilient, learned so much more about my neighborhood. I didn't realize all the great things that were in my neighborhood because I wouldn't walk around, because I'm like, what's the point? So that gets into the benefits of going car free. So let me get into some of that now. First of all, big benefit: finances. Whether you get a bike or not, or whether you just walk or take scooters or use public transportation, in all likelihood, you're going to save a ton of money. And when I say in all likelihood, it's basically a certainty. You're going to save a ton of money. I mean, unless you have to travel some obscene distance with like Ubers or Lyfts all the time, or taxis. You're saving money on, for one thing, car payments, and dealers and banks will screw the hell out of you for car payments. If you get a subprime loan, they do all kinds of dirty tricks. We all know about it. So much of the country is indebted to banks now for their cars, overpaying for cars that are not that good. A lot of people are not educated on what a good car is to buy. I was not when I bought my first car. I bought it from a guy I worked with, but it only lasted like 9 months, and it was in such bad shape. I turned it in to a dealer for $1,000. Got a 2005 Honda Civic. This was in 2009. Didn't realize how badly I was overpaying for that. I ended up spending well over $13,000 just to pay for that car. And that's aside from the maintenance, tires. I had a blown head gasket at one point. Had to get the door fixed. The door lock broke on the driver's side. That was like $300. They didn't even fix it properly at the dealer. Needed the catalytic converter replaced at one point. That was pretty expensive. So, gas, insurance. So I easily spent at least like $20,000 on that car. Did I really need that? And the answer is no. I lived in the DC area, Northern Virginia. I could have moved closer to work. I could have saved so much money, but I wanted my comfort. And the metro was around. I could have taken the metro. I could have gotten a bike. Never thought of it. And also, a lot of Northern Virginia is inhospitable to bike riding, especially where I lived, Annandale, which is just a dump of overly developed roads, and it's just a miserable place to live. Just look up Annandale in Virginia. You'll see how I felt about living there. So the finances are a big thing. You save so much money. Now in LA, the insurance is way higher than it was in Virginia. What I've heard is it's because there's so many more expensive cars here. If you hit one and your insurance company has to pay the repairs, they're going to have to spend a lot more money. So the monthly premiums are higher, deductibles, I don't know if they're necessarily higher, it depends what plan you get, I guess. So that's one thing, the finances in gas. You're paying for gas, my goodness. You're paying for parking. Well, that's a separate thing, I'll get into that. So time is another issue. You're spending time, assuming you're a decent person, you clean your car. Come on, people, keep your car clean. You're stopping at gas stations. You're getting regular work done on your car. You have to get oil changes, tire rotations at the very least. You have to get it inspected once every year or two. You have to find parking for it. You have to have somewhere to store it. A lot of people don't in LA. They park on the street. You have to sit in traffic. You are stuck in traffic. And it's not just that you're stuck in traffic. You are the traffic. On a small street, 10 cars is a traffic jam. But 10 bikes is a joy. It's a community. It's people making each other stronger by having the visibility and the numbers around them to sort of have a higher profile, so that there are more witnesses, there are more eyes if anyone, say, drives poorly and, hits someone, or if they're driving too close. It's like more of a warning, in a way, a caution against bad behavior. It's not a guarantee it won't happen, but a bunch of bicyclists together, that's already like such an empowering thing. I've done it. It's such a joyous experience. So another thing, parking. Do I need to say anything about that? Yes, I will, because it's aside from just the time you spend trying to park in a safe area, trying to park somewhere close by to where you want to go or your home. and paying for parking. It's the fact that we pay so much for parking that's supposedly free in taxes and in the environmental cost of we don't have good land use because we're so spread out, because there's so much parking everywhere for people, and we prioritize cars. So the more parking there is, the more we assume, oh, driving's the convenient way to get around. Park. There's no metro station by where I want to go. There's no bus stop necessarily, or the buses are not reliable, but there is parking. So get a car and park there. You assume at the grocery store, well, it's free parking, right? This is all incredibly expensive. And think how many parking spots there are for each car in a given city or in the country, and how many how am I trying to phrase this? How many parking spots there are, and how long they're unoccupied most of the time. So it's not like we're parking at the grocery store for 15 hours a day, unless you're one of the overworked employees there, but usually they're cutting your hours, so it's not that. But we pretend like we're not all paying even extra for something that's not really reaping us any benefit. And we're paying a ton for this in the lost land use, in the extra parking spots, because we can't think of a way around this. Now we're getting there. California has done things to eliminate minimum parking requirements. Buffalo, New York did it years ago. Austin, Texas did it. Fayetteville, Arkansas, I believe, has done it. Was it Fayetteville, or I can't remember if it was another city or county there. There's some legislation being proposed in Congress to eliminate parking minimums across the country. I doubt it'll pass, but it's good that it's getting visibility, because if we're going to have a sustainable future, we can't just keep paying for roads, redeveloping cities to expand with more highways, wider lanes. Like, we can't do it. Or wider highways, more lanes. Like, it's unsustainable. And also, we simply, we're not even maintaining roads and bridges properly. And we're constantly in debt because of our, not only the cost of these roads and the utilities running through them, but the actual car ownership itself. You're also, when you buy a car, if you're buying from a dealer at least, you're supporting some crappy organization, a dealership, and you're supporting a crappy car company in large part. Even like the ones that are making pretty quality cars like Toyota, they do dirty stuff too. I don't know what all their labor practices are, but they're over-engineering these pieces of junk because they got to have something to sell each year as a new model. Think about it. If they were just trying to make the most reliable, safest car, they could do that. Instead, what do? Add more weird features that you don't need. Add entertainment centers, because people really don't like driving, so they want entertainment while they're driving. They'd rather be on their phone or on some dash console where they can play podcasts or listen to music. And they make features that are unreliable. So they design something and realize, the airbag doesn't deploy, or there's some other problem. It's prone to catch fire. What happened with Anton Yelchin was a completely avoidable tragedy. So he was an actor, a very talented, famous young actor who died when his Jeep rolled backwards in his driveway and crushed him. And it was a new Jeep. Well, what happened was they made the gear shifter, they didn't just make it a regular, like a stick that just moves back and forth. You can see what it is. It was like a toggle, sort of, some kind of weird toggle thing. And he didn't realize it wasn't in park. And so the Jeep rolled back and crushed him. And I hate to just use someone's story like that in a way. I mean, it deserves to be stated, but that was totally avoidable. It was stupid over-engineering to keep engineers employed, to keep the prices high on these vehicles, and to show stuff to people in advertising as to why they should buy the car. Because there's not much reason to advertise just a dull-looking car that's just got good safety features, goes at a reasonable speed, it's pretty reliable. So anyways, there's the fact that you're not supporting these crappy car companies when you do that, when you don't buy cars. You don't have to interact with the police and get tickets, or you're not as liable to get tickets or interact with the police if you're not driving. So much of what police do is profile drivers, scan their license plates, look for pretexts to pull them over. Because it's funny when you think about it, there's not really much in the way of like civil rights advocacy for drivers as a class. There's like one group who does it, I think, but are there other groups doing it? Like as drivers, you're pretty much just exposed to whatever the police want to do to you when they pull you over. They can do whatever. They can impound your car. They can beat you. They can kill you. They can arrest you and say whatever pretext they need to. I mean, do I need to talk about that? How many people end up getting stuck in traffic court, and rather than fight it, because if everybody fought it, it would clog up the courts. If everybody said, "Oh no, I want time to get more evidence. I want to extend this, whatever," it would clog up the courts. So what do? They don't typically stop and find people who they expect will fight it in court. So many of the people the police pull over, black, brown, been made poor, kept poor, immigrants who don't speak English that well. And it's sort of a rigged system for the reason I mentioned too. For one thing is like they're getting people who can't really afford to fight it or are scared to, or they think, well, nobody's going to believe me if I say, you know, this cop profiled me or something. But the fact that, where was I going? I was going somewhere specific with this. People don't fight it, whatever. I lost the point. I had some good point about it, but the police know to go after certain people, and they don't have to explicitly say it. They don't have to say, oh, there's quotas. There basically are, but they won't like explicitly say that. And as a result, it's not really about keeping people safe. Oh, I remember what it is. It's the fact that we design roads for a speed that's too fast. We create big open spaces that signal to drivers, go fast here. And if other people are driving fast, then you don't want to have that speed differential where you're the one holding up traffic. So we design roads poorly. We design them so they can't be understood well in a lot of places, or they can't be navigated easily, such as with intersections where you have blind corners, where you want to turn right and people behind you are impatient, but you know you can't really pull out and safely turn right on the road or turn left. And drivers get impatient, they honk. I've had friends who do that. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? I had a friend who honked at a bus for stopping at a bus stop. So there's the whole issue of dealing with the police. It gives people, and here's another reason to give up your car. It gives you a false sense of invulnerability. It's like a force multiplier. It empowers people and sort of intoxicates people to engage in antisocial behaviors like threatening people on the road, trying to run them off the road, cutting them off, that you wouldn't do face to face. Like you'd be scared to do. Or you just have some sense of respect, as in, you know, face to face, you got to show someone more respect than you would when you're just seeing the facade of a vehicle, the shell of a vehicle. You don't see their eyes, you don't see the person. It automatically puts you into a mode of competition with others because you can't share much of the same space on the road. You have to fight for it. Whereas on foot, on a scooter, on a bike, that's much less likely to happen because you're taking up much less space, and also you're more connected. You're seeing people person to person. You're more connected to the city around you. You see it. That's what I noticed when I started taking the bus, and then especially riding my bike. I was like, oh, like I see the streets differently now. My sense of speed is different. The feel for the people around me is different because they're no longer sealed off from me as they were in my car. Now they're people like I share the street with. So that's a great benefit of going car free. Another benefit, you get more resilient. So you learn how to plan your days, how to get around. You do engage in more exercise, and that's another thing I'll get to, but you learn better how to get around by multiple means of transport, whether you have public transportation options, as I did. So I didn't even know there was a metro stop in my neighborhood. I didn't realize all the benefits of riding scooters. Do I have something on my chin? I don't know. Sometimes I get food on my chin. I used to think people who drove scooters were like out of their mind, like that's so dangerous. Once I started doing it, it's a little pricey, but I was like, oh, I get it. These are really convenient and they're fun. It should be safer to ride them around though. So we need streets better designed for multimodal transit, for active mobility, such as bikes, scooters, skateboards, wheelchairs, walkers, people just being able to get around by means other than cars. Physical, mental health benefits of ditching your car. It's numerous. So aside from you're helping the environment in a way, like, yeah, nothing's truly carbon free. Like even eating food, your food's packaged and shipped, and riding a bike, yeah, it was built somewhere. Although you can look for like sustainable bike companies, but those can be expensive too. Regardless, it's way more efficient to get around without a car as far as the environmental impact than with a car. And you're benefiting your own health so much. So you're improving your mental health and physical health. Even just taking the bus or metro, you're walking more, you're socially less isolated, you're more connected to people, more connected to the environment. I find biking to be more enthralling the more I do it, as opposed to other things, other activities. Think about it. You can do it for a while and the entertainment value drops off. Whether it's whatever you're into, just think, whatever activities. Even for me, there's only so many movies I can take in me a week, and I love movies. There's only so much reading I can do. I love reading good novels. Just read Heat 2. Oh my goodness, amazing book. But with biking, the more I do it, the greater a joy it is. The more I walk, the more I like walking. The more I take the metro and the bus, and yeah, it's sketchy in LA a lot of times, and that could be improved dramatically. I want to see world-class public transportation here, better than what they have in Japan or Germany or France or places in South America, anywhere. I think we could do it here, and we can help make this a livable city. And it's not just the public transportation, it's the land use, that density. We've got to be less spread out so that public transportation is viable. But the physical and mental health benefits are great. I've gotten in such better shape. I'm so glad about it. It's helped my posture. I had such bad pain in my back with shoulder impingements. Biking has helped alleviate that. And I don't have it anymore, but it just helps me keep good posture. It's just great, great all-around exercise. Even just walking or riding scooters too, because you're working your legs. You got to kind of bend your legs to absorb the shakes in the road, because the roads are so poorly maintained too. Another benefit of going car free, you're signaling to others and signaling to the city leadership and your state leadership and even federal government to shift priorities to, I wrote this all down, more connected, healthy, affordable, joyous, livable cities. So meaning, the way I look at it as, and it's not just the way I look at it, it's what I've lived. When you're getting around your city by means other than car, you're showing lived witness to the benefits of going car free. So you're showing hey, there's one more person here who's doing this without a car, who's getting around without it. It's like you're showing people, hey, I'm a testament to the fact that it's worth it to get around without a car. Now, for a lot of people, it's because they can't afford to get around with a car, but I think that shouldn't be an issue, in as much as it shouldn't be a problem to get around if you don't have a car. We should make it viable, and much more viable, to do that. We got to have more dense land use, mixed use, urbanist design. But also, we need better public transportation options. We need bike paths, separated bike paths, not just with those plastic bollards or plastic tabs like they have in downtown LA that cars can just run over. Actual infrastructure that separates you from the road, so drivers are safer and cyclists are safer. And it would encourage more people to use biking as a way of getting around. And we need more bike parking too, certainly. But the more people bike, even just a few, and get off the road, the better traffic will be. So it's better for drivers. And it's certainly better for drivers if cyclists are not on the road, sharing the road space with them. And smaller side streets, not as much of an issue. It's probably fine to share the road there for the most part. But definitely on bigger streets, we have all this opportunity to alleviate traffic, alleviate the stress of traffic, the noise pollution, which damages our health, certainly the air pollution, which gives people asthma, cancer, the metals in the air can contribute to all kinds of health problems like dementia. we need to move away from that to make it for a sustainable planet. And the way we're doing that is just when you ride around, however you do it, get on the train, get on the bus, you're providing lived witness to the fact that this is a desirable way of getting around. And city leaders and other people are just that much more like insightful and motivated to say, oh, okay, this is a good way to get around. We need to fund these properly. It's a vicious cycle when people don't want to ride the metro because the service isn't that good, but the service isn't that good because they can't get the funding for it because not many people ride it. So I put it on us for now to take the responsibility to do that and impel or compel city leadership to better fund these modes of transit and expand service, house people so we don't have people who use them as shelters, and give them dignity. Like, we have the option of doing all this. So, and another respect of the resilience and physical mental health aspect of moving away from cars and feeling more connected to others is understanding better how to help the people around you. So for me, it just tells me the even greater urgency. Like when I see people on the metro who are doing drugs or clearly in crisis and distress and having episodes, like, that's not reason to dehumanize them. That's reason to say, we have all this money, we have the richest people in the world in America, let's tax the rich properly, let's shift our priorities. If we want to talk about safety, like we always talk about, the military is keeping us safe and the police is keeping us safe, here's your perfect program. Call it the Military Police Partnership for Safety in America, and house people and get them medical care and get them off the road, because road deaths number over 40,000 a year in America. And certainly the environmental damage and the long-term health consequences to us kill many more people, injure many more people, put many people in the hospital. It doesn't make us safe. It's certainly not safe to be living on the street. I was homeless for 2.5 years. Now I was living in my car, but it was dangerous. When I was sleeping in my car was destroyed one night, also in October, I believe, but that was 2019. And I had to go to the hospital. It was painful. You can look up the video aftermath, whatever, it's on my channel, but it's not safe. So we have the means to do it. We have the opportunity. It's just like we don't quite muster up the motive yet. And a lot of people just straight hate homeless people, and they equate homeless with criminal. And it's a way of coding anti-black and anti-brown racism in terms of, oh, they're criminals and they're homeless, they don't want to work, all this nonsense, that they're drug users and stuff. You want to talk drug users? Look in every building on this street, look up and down your neighborhoods, there are drug users. Okay, it's just that some are housed, some are unhoused. Anyway, so it helps ground you, humanize you in a way where you could be a very decent person and drive. I'm not saying you can't be, but it's still, even for like good people, and most people have good impulses, I believe. It's just that we put blinders on, and we sort of tune out the stuff that we don't understand or don't know. And there's always more stuff to understand or know. We have to at some point filter out, all these things around us, just so we can move on with our day and not feel too like burdened by all the suffering around us. But driving cars, it tunes out more of that connection to others, and it just makes it a little bit easier to be isolated, or a lot more easier to be isolated and turn others into the other, like non-human, a stranger. Oh, they're this label, they're that. And to not see the opportunities to uplift those people, to help them and help ourselves. You realize it makes it better for all of us to live if our neighbors are housed, if everybody has quality food, can get a quality job if they want. Their housing is not tied to their job. Their medical care and food are not tied to their jobs. And employers better shape up and treat their employees right. Another benefit of moving away from cars, you can make new relationships and social groups. So I have loved this about biking. It is such a joy to be connected to people while biking. I have joined group bike rides. I've found out about more of them in LA. Again, providing lived witness when there's dozens or hundreds of us together riding our bikes on the street is awesome. More people understand the need for multimodal transport and active mobility, such as biking and walking, and they're going to clamor for it more. Just make make our cities and our neighborhoods more livable, more affordable, more humane, and stick it to those rich creeps who think, no, I don't want that because that would mean someone alternatively colored may be able to afford to move into my neighborhood. I'm not sure I approve of that. I have human rights too, a human right to keeping my property values high. Yeah, I'm not sure they earned the right to be as white as I mean, as, to live in my neighborhood as I am. Yeah, you know how you all think, and I know how a lot of you talk when nobody's looking about people you don't like, because I've overheard those conversations. So the social group, I mean, it's just awesome, and people bring like such a positive charge, in my experience, to biking and mobility events that I've been at now. Ciclavia, there's Streets for All in LA, Bike Culver City, I think is the name of the group. There's the Critical Mass bike ride, which I'm looking forward to going to. There's the Pride ride coming up. I'm like, now that I'm unemployed, I got laid off from my job. They talk about employers got to protect people, or be good employers, whatever. Protect workers from the employers. I have more time to ride my bike now. It's awesome. It's such a joy. I'd so much rather be out with someone riding a bike than for them to meet me in their car, which is what I did the other day. My friend came over. He parked here. I'm like, oh, come on. You live like 3.5 miles away. Parked here. It's just so antisocial, finding parking in my neighborhood. And then when we got back to his car, an old lady was stopped and asked if we're moving. And my friend wanted to ignore, but I'm like, come on, no, tell her, yeah, he's moving. Because for one thing, it's like, put the responsibility on yourself. Like, you're the one who drove here, and on me too. Like, you know, I invited you here and I said, yeah, okay, fine, drive over, but you parked here. And I didn't tell you in the first place, like, hey, get a bike. And now my friend is thinking about it, by the way. I really encouraged him. He's like, yeah, I've been thinking about it. I'm like, do it. You'll love it. Let's have bike rides together, man. But I said, like, look, this lady's probably been looking around for parking for a while. She's going to have to park blocks away. She's an old lady, like, you know, she doesn't want to have to walk blocks to her apartment. Let her park here. Like, take the lesson, take the L in a way. It's not a loss, but like, take the lesson, I should say, that L, of like moving away from your car when it's not necessary. For 3.5 mile ride, I was willing to ride my bike to him, but he didn't understand that, like, I didn't know when to meet him, and he was free by then. He's like, yeah, I'll just come over there. I'm like, well, I could ride my bike, but it would have taken like 20 or 30 minutes. So anyways, new connections, social groups, it's great. Benefits the environment, I already touched on that, but there's, aside from the air pollution, noise pollution, and the just stress of having cars constantly moving at high speed around you, there's the fact that when we build out roads more and more, it impels more traffic. It's called induced demand. Simple concept. When driving becomes a more viable way of getting around than other means of transport, and also when it's not that easy to get around without cars, more people will want to get cars. So you end up wearing out the roads more, creating more sprawl in cities because they get developed further and further out. So utilities have to go further out. That requires like more trash collectors. You know, postal routes to go further out, utilities to go further out, sewer lines, water, and it's not affordable. The tax bases in cities are often the poorest, most disinvested areas, and the welfare queens collecting the benefits of these tax gains from the urban cores and inner cities are the rich white people who are living out in the suburbs, who love to hate on people who live in cities, live in apartments, don't want apartments in their neighborhood, but certainly a lot of them just straight up don't want black or brown people in their neighborhood. And yet they complain about, oh, these people need to change these people. It's so disgusting. But they talk about poorer people as needing to change their mindset and understand wealth, when in reality it's like their mindset's fine. It's you want to stand in the way of wealth creation. I already touched on not paying scamming car companies. I mean, face it, a lot of them, not a lot of them, all of them overcharge. The dealerships overcharge. The banks will give loans with horrible terms and raise your interest rates. Happened to me. They raised my interest rate. And a lot of car companies too. First of all, they're causing so much death and pollution with their cars. They're wasting money that could go towards much more efficient, much more environmentally friendly, and much more joyous transportation, like all the other methods I talked about. And they lobby, by the way, they just straight up pay whichever party, they pay both parties a lot of times, to get favorable legislation to them so they don't have to do things like make safer cars, have speed governors, etc. Truck makers, especially, they get to bypass all the fuel economy standards because of their classification of their vehicles as trucks as opposed to cars. And that's a mess in itself because the trucks get bigger and bigger. The SUVs, the crossovers, they're more and more dangerous. They wear down the roads more. They give people this false sense of invulnerability where, and this status, this foolish car culture. And I'm not against cars inherently. Like, they can be beautiful machines. They can be enjoyable to ride in. A road trip can be fun. Me personally, I'd rather take a train if possible. But they can be beautiful machines. It's just that the idea of this car culture where commercials push it and movies push it, and I'm not even inherently against, well, movies pushing it. Like, I enjoy a good car chase, or scenes about cars like centering in them somehow. But car commercials are so corny and awful, and they show driving that you cannot do in real life. So they're already like promoting like unsafe driving in a way. And it's not that I'm being a scold or saying, yeah, people will drive poorly because of those. I'm just saying it's such a lazy way of going through life, of just like, oh, a car is cool, let's get a car. It was something I fell for too. It doesn't make anybody a bad person. It's just part of our consciousness that I think could be elevated and raised, and we could put it in perspective of something that's not that cool inherently. You could enjoy it. And by the way, driving will be much better if we had multimodal transport and if people who didn't want to have to drive like me didn't have to. I was a very safe driver. I never liked driving though, really. And I drove a car once recently. I had to help somebody move a car, and I was like, oh, this feels all wrong. The sense of speed is wrong. You can't see around you. The car is way too powerful. So you shouldn't have to drive if you don't want to. We need to give, that's another thing. You just become a better person in a way, not better than anyone else, but better than your former self when you realize that you're going to be the one to help provide for more opportunities for your neighbors to get around, because people right now who don't want to have to spend money on a car or drive a car or park a car many times have to. And so they have to have it to get to work, and they have to work to afford their car. And if they can't get to work, they can't afford their car. If their car doesn't work, they can't get to work, and they're going to lose both. It's a terrible, vicious cycle. So what else? You're not contributing as much to road damage. Already touched on that. And I believe multimodal transport and getting away from cars, that'll be a great thing. It's not inherently a better thing. It has to be done right for the rights of people with disabilities to get around. It shouldn't be like, a house arrest sentence if you live in an area, just because like cars are abundant there, you can't get around safely, the sidewalks are broken, it's noisy out, the sidewalks are too narrow in a lot of places to even move if you have a wheelchair to get around. If you have a walker or some other mobility device, yeah, you might be able to get around, but it's harder. If you have vision issues, you can't see well the sidewalk, like you can trip and fall. I've literally seen that around the corner from where I live, and now they have spray painted the sidewalk where it's like jutting up like this, spray painted like neon green. I'm like, oh, that's nice. So now like you have a little warning that you're going to step onto a broken sidewalk. And this, one of the richest cities in the world, is not committed to fixing all its sidewalks. They barely have enough people to fix just a few sidewalks around LA County. They don't have nearly enough. Again, if you want to talk safety, if you think the police make people safe, call it the Police Safety Mobility Project and give the police a big glowing ovation, or not an ovation, let's not go overboard, but let them take their pictures and have a press conference and let the police just be like dignitaries, just standing there and saying, yep, fix that sidewalk, good, okay. Because that would help so many people's safety, their food, their ability to get food, their ability to get medical care when they can travel easily to the grocery store, to their doctor's offices. And finally, I'll say, and also a lot of people they can't drive. They're too young. They have other mobility issues, vision issues, cognition issues. So why do that to them? Why not make it easier to get around? Sure enough, a lot of people are waking up to this, or they just can't afford cars, don't care, don't see the need. That was how I was when I was younger. Eventually I did want one, and it was fun to drive, but I realized well, what I realized today. Final point I want to make: when you, what was I saying? You or your? I got to pick one. When you move away from car ownership and move towards other modes of transit, you learn more about the city around you, the streets around you, the people, and yourself. I guess I've been talking about that the last 40 minutes, but the more I do it, the more I get around without a car, the more like it changes my relationship with myself, with my body. I learn more about the city. Like I enjoy, it's so grounding to see the street names and like know where I am exactly. Now, yeah, you can do that in a car too, but you wouldn't, generally speaking, just drive around the neighborhood for fun. Some people do. My dad used to do stuff like that. But biking makes so much more sense to do because also the repairs on a bike, it's like 20 bucks for a new tire. I need the brakes redone, like 10 or 15 bucks, whatever. Most I spent once was like $70. I think the cassette was messed up and I needed new spokes or something. That's it. So the repairs are so much cheaper on a bike. And now you have e-bikes, you have electric scooters. Scooters, I was generally referring to electric ones, but longboards. I'm going to get a longboard at one point. That was so much fun to ride. That was awesome. I rode one a few weeks ago at a mobility event. And I think we could have the best transportation system in the world right here in LA. I would love to see that. It's possible. It's not going to come directly from leadership and politicians because they don't have control over that. It's going to come from all of us like pushing for it and compelling them to. Now, great thing is LA has a 30-year plan to spend like $400 billion on creating like a bunch more metro stops connecting the city, but that's 30 years and probably 400 billion. They could get more money than that if they taxed the rich properly, shifted money away from overspending on police to transit and other projects to make people safer and make it easier to get around the city. We could have a better environment here. The air could be cleaner. And it could be such a more affordable, joyous, healthy place to live. And so those are the things I learned about myself in terms of, oh, this is what I want for LA. I'm still a filmmaker, I'm still a writer, still doing all this stuff, a YouTuber. But I realized, oh, I love this thing, like getting around by public transportation and bike that I didn't know I could love. And yeah, it could be a lot better to bike, it could be a lot better to take public transportation in LA. So let's get there, let's do it. I'm going to be the one to lead it. I'm going to be the one to say, here I am. I'm providing live witness to this. Like I'm going to raise my hand and say, watch me, everyone. Like I can do it. I know not everyone can, or not everyone wants to, or not everyone should have to. It's just providing the option for people who want to. And once you provide that option, a lot more people will want to. It's not a simple matter of, oh, people are waiting for it and they'll do it. It's people like me who didn't quite know that they wanted to and didn't know this was a great idea. But riding the bus, it was so much more pleasurable than driving. To be chauffeured around, it was so nice. Now they have electric buses. I don't know totally if that's a great idea or not. I've heard mixed things. Adam something is the YouTube channel said negative things about it, but a lot of people said positive things about it. Main concern for me is, I guess, the possibility of fire with batteries on the bus. But I've heard a lot of great things about it. Like it's a smoother ride. That's the big thing. It's a much smoother ride because I've ridden on buses where, yeah, it feels like you're in I don't know how you'd call it, like a rocket going through like severe turbulence, like you're riding through the most intense earthquake kind of on LA's crappy roads. But those are my thoughts on the benefits of going car free in LA. I think they're numerous. And I just want to provide info and an option for people to like explore within themselves. Is this a good option for them? Not everyone can, not everyone needs to, but I think a lot of people will want to and will realize like, oh, that's best for them. And I would never want to go back to driving a car. I would much rather, if I had money for a car, I'd much rather just take that money and give it to an organization that advocates for multimodal streets and urbanist design and more transit, or that advocates for more safety, or if there's a way to even just directly like donate it or invest it into public transportation itself. I'd rather just do that with the money, or just get people bikes and organize people to get our own movement to like make bike buses or biking groups or walking groups, or go fix our own sidewalks or whatever we need to do to make LA and make North America and the world more livable. But right now, America is behind a lot of other countries on this, and we can do so much better. So that's what I think about the benefits of going car free in LA. Let me know what you think.